A recent article by Mike Bianchi of the Orlando Sentinel came down to the basic premise of how many wins does Mike Norvell need to stay in Tallahassee?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. I hope everybody is well on this Sunday night. I want to discuss a recent article by Mike Bianchi of the Orlando Sentinel that I thought was glorious overall, but it has a very important part that I want to add to it, and I want to talk about the win total for Norvell overall. Those two things will intertwine. If we get any chat questions or any comments, I'll be happy to comment on them, but this is really straightforward. I've got 4 or 5 topics that I want to hit direct. I want to read part of Bianchi's article. And above all else, just want to kind of clear the air on where I think things stand. I've listened to every FSU podcast, read every article that I can possibly be a part of here recently, and these are just my takes. So anyway, let's start off with a couple of basic premises here. Number one, in his article, I'll read some of it. It's really good. You should go check it out at the Orlando Sentinel. I think the biggest thing here is that he wants to make it clear that $106 million in the last fiscal year was spent by FSU boosters, fans, etc., to help resurrect the program, which is a lot of money. There's no question. But a lot of that went into facilities, etc., the new football office, obviously Doak is being revamped, etc. How exactly all of that money was used, I don't know, but still $106 million is a lot of revenue. But there's another part to that. How many guys did they get with that $106 million? We'll get into a few quotes in particular, but the number one quote here, let me pull it up. You can do with this whatever you want, but FSU boosters delivered. Now it's Mike Norvell's turn. That is from Mike himself, meaning, hey, they've done a lot to help the program. This is year 7 for Mike Norvell. They need return on their investment. It's kind of hard to debate that return on investment is due. He's 100% correct. But again, it's one thing that, like, I've been in Dope right before it got finished, and we've all seen the renderings and all that. It'll look great. And that's fantastic. But seats being nice doesn't make players better. That's a hint on what's coming here in just a minute. So here are my comments regarding this in general. Actually, let me read a little bit of Mike's article first. You tell me if you agree with this. Then I've got a handful of questions. I'll put them up on the screen too. But I want to give him credit because, again, this is a very good article. Again, Mike Bianchi of the Orlando Sentinel. And I think it's very important. All right. During our wide-ranging interview, Alford talked about Norvell and the significant improvement he expects from the football program this season. Notice the word. He didn't use numbers. He was smart. Alford did an interview with Mr. Bianchi, and he didn't give a number, which I don't blame him, but that's still the bottom line. Okay. So what is significant improvement? Anytime it's subjective, they can do whatever they want at the end of the year based on the money they think they'd have for the buyout if they need to do that. And for those that don't know, Norvell's buyout is still north of $40 million at the end of this season. That's a lot of cash. Keep that in mind. He talked about Florida State's boosters, who somehow responded to 2 consecutive losing seasons by digging even deeper and producing a record fundraising year. He talked about the millions FSU has invested coaches, players, facilities, and its football infrastructure. He talked about how Florida State's legal battle with the ACC helped change the conference's revenue sharing model, giving the Seminoles more money to spend. And perhaps most intriguingly, even after that settlement, Alford seemed to indicate that Florida State will continue to evaluate its options, conference and otherwise, moving forward. I think that Alford was very prepared to do this interview, which he should be. He's the athletic director at Florida State University. But he lumped everything in together here, Bianchi, by stating, again, invested in coaches, players, facilities, and its football infrastructure. All these things listed in that manner make it seem they're equal. And now it's just time to spit it out. While facilities are better, they improve their assistant coaching staff, I have no doubt. And they have better infrastructure and whatnot. Garrett comes over from Duke, etc. They still didn't have the money to spend even in the stratosphere with Miami, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, LSU, etc., on the largest stage. Doak Campbell's going to look great. That new football office is going to look great. But if, again, this is directly from Bianchi, this is his own way of putting it. Alford talked about Norvell and the significant improvement he expects from the football program this season. That's the most important statement, in my opinion, in the entire article, and it's towards the top. What is the number that you have to get to? I want you to think about that for a second. I want to read another quote here from, I've got one down here towards the middle, towards just past the halfway point, from Mr. Alford himself. So he avoids directly right here, trying to get into the numbers game. This is from Alford. I'm not going to establish hypothetical benchmarks, meaning a win total, but Mike Norvell and all of our coaches know our expectations and what our fans expect, Alford said. When you have provided the resources to be successful, there's more pressure and standards that you have to go out and compete on the field. Now, that's 100% true. If you're given more opportunity, you should be able to go out and produce more. With that being stated, there's something else to keep in mind here. You have to also look at the opportunity to make sure that everything is consistent. So this is Alford's, statement for those of you that want to read it directly. I've got it up here on the page for you on YouTube. And again, I'll read it just to be clear. When you have provided the resources to be successful, there's more pressure and standards that you have to go out and compete on the field. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Alford is wrong, because he's not. But if you do not go out and give a specific total, it's kind of hard for me to be all that excited about what you're trying to do in terms of getting the fan base riled up and getting everybody else. Because here's the bottom line, and I'll put up my questions. Anything under 8 wins, and this fan base is going to riot. I say 9 wins for him to keep his job. I know that's probably not going to happen, but Florida State's standard has been drastically lowered. You can go to any of the local media outlets, national outlets. I haven't heard anybody say differently about that, and why should they? And that's why probably, again, Mr. Alford, all respect, is not naming a number. But that's what fans want. They want hardline, upfront numbers. So do I, and so does every other media member. We know it's not going to happen. But if I'm just going to throw this out. If somehow Norvell and this staff come back after they win 6 games, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a family member of somebody in the administration that's a part of this. I cannot remotely imagine what that would be like. I feel sorry for them. Alford at the front of that. It will not be fun to go to Publix. Use your imagination. This fan base is done dealing with average by the Florida State traditional standard. Is that fair? Probably not. But there's nothing about fan as a definition that is very fair. It's very lenient towards one thing. Fan is short for fanatic. And that's what a lot of Florida State fans are, especially around Tallahassee. So I understand that he's not giving a hardline number, but is he even remotely going to admit at the end of the season, regardless of how it goes, maybe they do win 8 games. If they win 8, they'll keep him. But if they keep him at like 6-6 and say, hey, we made progress, we looked better, the schedule was harder. If they throw out a whole bunch of whatabouts, they use a bunch of excuses, what fans are going to say, it's going to be a disaster for the Florida State Athletic Department. Again, I don't like that, but that's just the nature of fans. Working in high school football in the ways I do, 7-on-7, 5-on-5, going to camps, combines, etc. Parents, players, everything. Like it's going to be a long offseason. Like if you thought this one was bad, wait till the next one. They got a minimum. They have to get to 8 for this not to be a disastrous offseason after this next year. That's my take. Now, after the break, I'm going to dive back into Bianchi's article. I'm also going to bring up my own set of questions. And if you have any questions, I got some comments in the chat. I'll bring those up as well. That is next, right here on Locked on Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and none of them talk to each other. And that's where Odoo comes into play. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. Sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place. Odoo is a platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. The best organizations know that success isn't about talent. It's about having everyone working towards the same goal. Very true. And that's also true in sports, just like business. Florida State is no different. When Bobby Bowden built his empire, his staff was on the same page with how they wanted to recruit, the type of offense, defense, and everything they did. And that's why they built a dynasty. So with that, keep in mind that great organizations become one because they win by doing things together. Everything matters with your operations. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/locked on. That's odoo.com/locked on. We are also brought to you by our friends over at Poncho. If you're like me and you basically live in your game day gear, and this is a Poncho shirt that I have on right here, you probably don't like the fact that a lot of them don't necessarily fit into all circumstances. This is one of them that you can go out to dinner with your wife. You can go to the game. You can hang out with your friends or do whatever you want. And the new game day collection in general, it doesn't matter if it's Florida State or anything else. It's one of those things where it's a performance shirt, but it doesn't look like one. It's going to look a little more crisp, a little more clean, a little sharper, and you can rep whatever team you want, Florida State or otherwise. And the best part, again, it's lightweight, it's breathable. It's not one of those hot cotton shirts that, especially in the deep South, that don't really fit your profile. It's not going to work very well. And that's why you should try it. And also, regular style, it can be slim, it can be tall, whatever fit you want, and short or long sleeves. And if you want to grab your team shirt between now and September 7th, you're also going to be covered by Poncho's Natty Back Guarantee. If your team wins the college football national title, Poncho will give you a full refund on your purchase, and you get to keep the shirt. I just don't like the hot shirts, especially in the South. I look for performance shirts of any kind. If it's not breathable, I'm not wearing it to a game. I don't care. But having something that can look good at the game, fit in, and also look good at a nice restaurant doesn't happen very easy, and Poncho allows that. PonchoOutdoors.com/locked on. Enter your email. You get $10 off and free shipping. That's PONCHO outdoors.com/locked on. Head over, drop in your email, get $10 off and free shipping. All right, let's discuss a few questions, and then I'll jump into the chat, and then we'll get back into Mike's article. But again, go check out Mike Bianchi's article, Orlando Sentinel. I thought it was really, really good, and it brings up a lot of great points. I'll read a little bit more, but I'm not going to steal the whole thing, if you will. Here is the big piece that I have. These are the 4 questions that I have in general, comments, whatever you want to say. 4 Norvell win-loss questions to ponder. How many wins does he get? In my opinion, if he gets to 7, they're going to be happy, and I don't think that's going to make Florida State fans happy. We'll see. If he gets to 6, that's the one I'm concerned about. Absolutely, unequivocally. If he wins 6, he's got to go. Number 2, how does Florida State look on game day? Like the feel of it. Do they look improved? Let me be very clear about this. It's one thing to go win 7 games or something like that, whatever the number, pick the one you want. You can tell when a team has improved. Like, do they function better? Special teams, the little crisp things like on third down defense last year that killed Florida State. Have they improved? This is the thing I've harped on all offseason. Can they throw the football from the pocket? Can Ashton Daniels make post-snap reads? Throw the ball in the middle of the field with accuracy, timing. That is all coaching. Those are the things that have to be graded. If they can't do those things, they have not improved. It is not going to help Mike Norvell's cause, and it's certainly not going to help Florida State's record either. Number 3, this is a really big one, and I think everybody will agree with this. They need to win at least one of Miami, Florida, SMU, or Bama. If they don't, does that hinder Norvell coming back? Sure, A, it's 4 L's, but B, it's like, well, who did you beat? If they beat Louisville, okay, that'd be one. That's a Friday night game at Louisville. I would give them that. That's not an easy place to play, and Braum is a heck of a coach. All right. What about the Virginia game? There'll be a solid team, but we're not sure. They were in the ACC title game last year, but that's not an institutional peer. Sorry. NC State, maybe we'll see where they're at towards the end of the year. That's next to the last game before the Noles play the Gators. CJ Bailey and company probably going to throw it around a little bit. But what's their defense going to be like? I'm not hearing good things from what that's expected to be, at least from my buddy Kenton Gibbs, who's a part of Locked On Wolfpack, and he's a former NC State player, lives in the Tri-Cities area there in central North Carolina. Florida State should be able to at least score, and it's at home. Can they win at least Virginia and NC State? Like, they need something that they can point to, say, hey, we beat this good team. Are they going to do that? And then finally, this probably shouldn't surprise anybody else. Norvell's in-game decisions, did they go well? Like, last year they lost 4 games in a row that were really close. Some of them, like the goofiness, was it the Stanford game? Correct me. No, NC State. The football hits one of the Florida State players on a punt return. Like, stuff like that. You can blame who you want. Coach is going to take some of that blame, but they need decisions that change games from the headset, meaning Mike Norvell. He's going to be the play caller, so he can't blame anything else. That's going to be Mike. And he also needs some big game decisions. When he uses timeouts, whether they go for an onside kick, whether he makes a change at quarterback, big game decisions in the moment. You're going to get credit or not if you're the head coach. And again, especially because he is now the play caller once again. Those are the things that I'm most interested in. What do you think? Let me see what we got in the chat. I hope everybody's having a good night. Thank you very much for stopping in. Eric Morse, what's going on? Hey, man. Hope all is well. FSU 305, glad to see you here. Brian, if Mike Norvell gets off to a slow start, how quickly before they say enough is enough? Define slow start. This is my take, though. We got to think about the order of the games. New Mexico State, that's a W. Second game, at home in Doak. They're going to be playing SMU. Is it a must win? No, but if you lose that one, you're probably going to lose at Bama. That would be my guess. That means you'd be 1-2 with a victory over a G6 school. That's not exactly ideal. The next game is Mike Norvell and the Noles hosting his alma mater, Central Arkansas. You're going to win that game. So you're 2-2. But again, no P4 wins. And then a 4-game stretch that everybody's probably talked about in some capacity. They get the Virginia Cavaliers at home. Friday night game on the road at Louisville. Then they go to Miami. Good luck. Bye week, and then they host Clemson. That's 4 pretty tough games. If they lose the Virginia, Louisville, and Miami game, keep in mind, at that point, it'd be pretty rough. You'd be 2-5 going into a bye. I think it gets canned. If you're 3-4 there, you could still get canned if Miami trounces you. You go into the Miami game 3-3 and you get beat 23-20, maybe not. But if you get beat 31-7, yeah, it's a problem. How it looks, it's why I put it in my list of questions, is very important. Not saying it's the end-all be-all, because it's not. And I think this team will be better than it was last year, but the schedule is a lot harder too. This is not a very favorable schedule for the Florida State Seminoles. And as I said many times here, I'm not picking a really good record by any means, 4-8. But if they went 8-4, it would not surprise me. They are the hardest team to pick. There's just so many moving parts, coaches and players. It's really, really hard. Eric again says, I know Norvell's buyout is still pretty high, but at what point do they say, forget the buyout, find the money, and get Norvell out of Tallahassee? That's the $1 million question, brother. If I had that answer, I'd be earning 20% and living on the beach. Kramer, I think 9 wins is impossible. That means you have to be at least one of Bama, Miami, Clemson, or Florida. Hey, this is Florida State. If you're not doing that in year 7, you know what? You've failed. But I understand your point. But whose fault is it that they're in that spot? Here's the number of times Mike Norvell has had a top 10 recruiting class. 0. That's on Norvell. Don't blame anybody else. That is on Mike Norvell. It's Florida State after all. Gary Davis, what's going on? College football season is officially here. The offseason is officially over, and the college football season is officially here. He just keeps saying it. Yes, I know most of our teams open next Saturday, but football is back. Yeah, just in general, I love college football, so that's a good point. Kramer, would you rather Chroma have a legit 1,000-yard season or Ashton be a top 15 quarterback in terms of efficiency? And which do you think is more probable to happen? It would be Ashton, because you said the key word there, efficiency. I mean, not turning it over. And for him, that also makes a big part of his job, just whether or not they're running RPO and who gets the ball. It's all decision making. Sometimes that means he just gives the ball up. And while I expect Chroma to run for at least 800, 900, they may split up the carries. They got some pretty good backs. They can do it with three different guys getting, like one guy gets 450, one gets 600, and another gets 750, and then Ashton gets another 450. You got to remember, he's going to tote the football. Florida State could be a very unique team. You could go that way. I just think Chroma is such a super talent that he'll run for about 1,000. But your point again, whether or not Ashton is efficient is really, really important. Because if he's not, they really don't have much of a chance. It's quarterback. It's the most important position in sport, my friend. 7 is acceptable, but I think the bar is 8 or more. This is from Eric Morse. It is sad how far Florida State has really fallen so quick and fast. I remember them being one of the gold standards and upper echelon teams. Well said. Frederick Rhodes, bring back Jimbo. He's not going to cost us a bunch of money right now. Texas A&M is still paying him. He had over $60 million coming. That's not false. Jim Truby, I got to laugh at all the FSU fans. I've been a fan since '86 following this team. They want to get rid of the coach so bad, but who are you going to replace him? It's a quality question. There's nobody out there that you're guaranteed. I get it. I was talking to somebody about this earlier today in a text thread I had going with a buddy of mine. Look, it's not easy because there's no obvious answer. I'm not saying there isn't a good candidate. That's false, but there's no clear-cut answer to that question. Champs 998. NIL matters when it comes to recruiting, and Florida State's roster is still in the low $20 million range. That is not ideal. It is not. When we come back, I want to read a little bit more of Bianchi's article, and I want to give some more thoughts. If you have any questions about what I say or Bianchi or anything, and again, go check out his article, Orlando Sentinel. You'll find it quick. It's really good. Gives a baseline with a lot of numbers, and I'll read a few more when we come back. But it is important to understand that Florida State's invested pretty well, but they're still not where they need to be with the roster. There's two parts to this. So I think everybody will probably learn that once they see SMU and Alabama game, like the depth of Florida State. That's where the money might have been spent a little different. We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a home run today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. All you can do is pick a game. Doesn't even have to be your favorite team. Who's going to hit a home run in that game? Pick that player. If you are correct, you'll receive a profit boost for your next bet at a chance for extra winnings. And you can make a pick every day till the end of the season. Daily Dingers is another way to stay engaged, even when your team's not involved. Every game has someone capable of hitting a home run. Now you get a chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. Here's my advice. I've followed baseball my whole life, and this following trend is just the way it is. The teams at the bottom now, they're going to be bringing up guys that honestly, they're just trying to save arms. If they're out of the race, pick somebody from the team that's not out of the race against some of these younger pitchers or guys that are coming off injury, etc., from some of the bottom feeders. I don't care what game it is. That's the way to go. Are you ready to play your game with FanDuel? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and pick who's going to hit a home run. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Before I hit the Bianchi topic once again, just remember that Florida State is going to be, just going to make this prediction right now, going to be the biggest up and down team in college football this year, quite possibly, certainly one of. And what I mean by that is from series to series. If you haven't watched this, go check out the Film Guy Network. He did a really good Ashton Daniels breakdown the other day from the Auburn game. I think it was only the Vanderbilt game, but he killed Vanderbilt. But he only played in a few games for Auburn last year. And Ashton didn't play really well with Stanford, although they didn't protect him. They didn't have enough talent. Brooks Austin knows what he's doing. He understands football, but it just shows how wild this can be. But at the end of the day, Ashton Daniels has, I believe it's 24 touchdowns and 22 interceptions in his career. I expect there to be some topsy-turvy with Florida State. And they still may win some of those games because they got quite a bit of skill talent. But nonetheless, here's a little bit more from the Bianchi article. And I just want to bring up a couple of points here. Let's see. Just some notes here. Financial, I think these are really good points that Mike put in his article. FSU is projected to receive about $44.9 million in media distribution under the new formula, which Alfred says is about $12 million more than it would receive under an equal share model. That's a big deal. In other words, Florida State fought for a bigger piece of the pie. Oh, yes, they definitely did. $12 million could pay for an offensive tackle, another receiver, another defensive tackle, et cetera, and of course, facilities, and of course, coaching salaries. That's a lot of money. So what they did was very good. Miami, Clemson, and Florida State, let's be honest, carry the league financially in terms of putting butts in seats for conference games. And it's quite honestly why Notre Dame has the gig they do with the ACC, because they sell out wherever they go. The league's not the deepest when it comes to fan appreciation and people showing up. But those three schools, FSU, Miami, and Clemson, it's not close. Those three carry the banner. So I thought that was a really good point that Mike brought up. And here's a little bit more on that in general. Asked if he won the battle with the ACC, Alford replied, I wouldn't call it a win, but if you're driving the media contract, you should earn more of the revenue. Just straight on, that's 100% correct. And that was one of the things that I was surprised that the ACC gave in on, but I just think they got tired of getting dragged through the mud. I thought Alford and FSU did a good job of that, and Clemson too, but I'm sure that the overtures about Virginia, Miami, and North Carolina considering leaving as well, albeit more private. We hear some of this stuff in the media, also did not help the ACC's cause. They knew they either had to give in a little bit or the league was done. So I thought that was interesting. Here's another one that I think is pretty interesting. The landscape has changed considerably, he says. It's still our responsibility to continue to evaluate what is best for Florida State and what are our options. I'm a decision tree guy. I'm going to lay it all out with the options and look at them. At the end of the day, we will always evaluate opportunities that strengthen Florida State. Again, as I noted earlier in the show, Alford was very prepared for this interview. He did a great job. This part about the conference realignment and all that, I have no problem with it. I think he did everybody kind of a favor, just laying it out there. So I don't have any problems. But now, again, something I touched on briefly, I want to dive into a little more now. They talked about all the money in the last year that the donors and stuff sent in. I didn't have to write down this. I'm a big notes guy. I got a notepad here, just full of all kinds of quotes, stats, everything else. This one I don't need. And unfortunately for Florida State, I don't need it. They are still not in the stratosphere of the elite teams with the NIL for transfer portal and recruiting. Those are my areas. I'm getting ready to do another podcast here in a little bit for the Portal Pod, doing a live show, do it every night at 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, talking recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal. We're talking transfer portal quarterbacks tonight already, because there's going to be a bunch of people trying to steal somebody's quarterback after this year because a bunch of the big boys are losing all their QBs. To that end, Florida State ended up with Ashton Daniels. Again, he's not a bad quarterback, but he hasn't proven as much as several others. And other guys they brought in first went elsewhere because Florida State didn't have the money. So did they raise money? Maybe more than I thought. But did they have that money available directly for players? No. If they did, they wouldn't ended up with the roster they did. Now, they improved it. Not saying it's not improved. Is it up to Florida State standards, traditionally speaking, though? And it's not close. It's not close. I have not spoken to one person that is close to the program, that covers it, that's in the recruiting world, a 7-on-7, anybody, a trainer. And I've had to ask 20 people this in some capacity. What do you think Florida State's going to be this year? Not one person says this is Florida State of old. I got a few friends that are diehard Noles fans that are in the industry. They don't hardly follow Florida State. Like they don't believe in Norvell at all. Like if you think I'm negative about it, you have no idea. And it's just incredible. Like some of the negativity. One of the guys over at Noles 24/7, he's one of the newer guys there, thinks there's about a 30% chance they win 2 games this year. He said that on the podcast. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's more like a 3% chance, not 30, but or whatever. I don't see that. But this roster is improved. I just don't think the wins are going to be there because, again, it's why I put it on the screen. How does Norvell handle in-game? Do you trust that? He's got play calling duties now, so his time, that's a lot of time to prepare a play sheet for each individual game, studying. you're more of an assistant coach in a lot of ways. I'm kind of curious how they'll handle game day responsibilities amongst the staff. That's another topic. I'm not sure that's going to go well. He's got to prove it. And secondarily, quarterback, do you really believe in it? Offensive line, we didn't know the exact starting lineup. Herb Hand's probably the most honest guy in the business. His interview recently, while I enjoyed it, you could tell he's just not settled. There were about a week or 10 days or so. They were about 10 days when Herb got interviewed. From the actual game, he didn't know. That's not a good sign. It's not an indictment, but it's not what I would call ideal. So quarterback and O-line, we're not sure. D-line depth, Are we sure about the will linebacker next to Chris Jones? Possibly, but there's nobody proven there. And then on top of everything else, like I'm completely in the boat with Jabril Rawls at corner. I think he's an NFL player. But are we 100% sure at the other corner spot? Because you can avoid Jabril and go to the other way. We think it's Quindarius, and I think he'll do pretty well, but it's not a guarantee. His skill set is usually man defense, not zone, and they're going to play a heck of a lot of zone. In the back end, Ashton Barker is a freakazoid, but he's changing positions. How will he adapt to that? Are they going to be able at any level to handle injuries? They're going to come. Those are some of the questions. There are a lot. Now, I'm all in on Deuce Robinson like anybody else. Chrome as a dude, he's an NFL player. I think the tight end room is better than what most people think. There's going to be some players surprised, but there are so many question marks here. Again, this is a very difficult team to grade for a season record, and it's a very difficult team for me to sit there and say, I feel good about it. I've made my prediction clear for months that I'm picking 4 games until otherwise proven, because I don't think they've got the depth. Once injuries hit, I think they're going to lose close games. But if they won 8 games, I still wouldn't be surprised either. In other words, I wouldn't touch predicting where they're going to end up with the 10-foot pole. We'll see. To that end, we've got a few more comments in the chat. I will jump in there. Let's see here. Kramer, do you think it is possible the defense, second year in the system, deteriorates and does worse than last year? I hate clenching my cheeks when it's third down, and I just know FSU is giving up the first. 2 points on that. You bring up the third down. That is my concern. Remember, the big fella is no longer there in the middle. They don't have a 330-pound nose guard that's 6'6" and just a freakazoid. I think he's playing with the Jets. Anyway, the point is still the same. That's a lot to lose there. Defensive line depth, we don't know. Rylan Kennedy's never been the guy. In 3 years, he's got 3.5 sacks at Texas A&M. Maybe he's that guy. I don't know. Where's the pass rush coming from? And then on top of it, until otherwise proven, last year's linebackers were terrible in coverage. There's no nice way to say it. I need to see that. So you've got some possibilities there, but I think the biggest thing, and this is where I disagree that it'll be worse, you're going to know the system better. How many times did you say to yourself, why wasn't there anybody there? Whether it was a run gap fit or just a bust and like bust. There's nobody near the dude. Second year, you shouldn't have as many of those. That's got to help, right? I would assume. Eric Morse, going to be very expensive. Have to find the money to get rid of Norvell and then find the money for a new coach. True. Probably going to have to find to lower level and a hidden Kirk Cignetti. That wouldn't surprise me if they went with the G6 coach or something like that. It's just so hard to get somebody to change jobs, like a level up job. Why would you go to Florida State right now? It's going to be difficult. And I'm sure that's something Florida State's thought about. Champs 998. Not getting a new coach if the roster's NIL is in the $20 million range. Most coaches worth anything will want to be competitive with the top schools in NIL for a roster. This is something else. I don't know how you pitch that. My guess is they're going to say, hey, some of these guys, you know what? We weren't going to donate unless Mike was gone. I'm sure there's part of that. If it does get to that point, they got to sell that they're going to be able to spend more. If they can't, they're in trouble. There's no doubt. Any team would be. Eric, NIL matters to an extent. Cignetti won a national title with the 72nd rated roster in the nation, beat Oregon by 5 touchdowns in the Peach Bowl. Comes down to buy-in and having the right people. You got to give the Indiana Hoosiers credit. That's the wildest season I've ever seen in college football. Champs, we rank 14th in the ACC in football NIL for roster. Where do you think we rank nationally? Great question. I would guess probably mid-30s. low to mid 30s. I mean, the obvious ones, so like Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Miami, Florida, LSU, those, the Texas schools plus Oklahoma, Oregon, Southern Cal, those schools they dwarf Florida State. It's not that they're ahead. It's like way ahead. That's a concern. They can go spend $5 million on a quarterback. Florida State cannot. That's the bigger part. Champs, in 22 and 23, we ranked in the top 15 nationally in roster NIL. We're not close now. The market's changed and Florida State hasn't spent as much. Again, I'm not sure of the dynamics there. They've raised money, but did they have to spend some of that for the facility upgrades? Maybe. I honestly don't know what it is. Deontay Merricks, I just don't know if Mike can evaluate talent. They haven't been able to recruit top 10 classes. I do know that. Samuel D, what are you hearing about Malachi Marshall? Just the basic things that everybody else did and just my own judgment watching him throw. I liked his film from when he played at Iowa Western Community College. He's got a natural arm. He's just he reminds me of a baseball player that would play in the outfield, that guy that's just long and lean. He doesn't necessarily look like it, but one's hitting the gap and a guy tries to stretch it out to third and he just throws him out from right center. Skips the cutoff man and just throws it to third, but he's got that kind of arm. That's the difference. Now, he's 170 pounds. That's not ideal, but I don't know how much of the playbook he knows, and that's a big part of it too. Signetti showed that a team functioning as one in buy-in matters more than stars in NIL. Look at what Signetti has beaten in the college football playoffs. Bama, Oregon. Yeah, he's got a point. They beat Miami in the title game too. That's a great post. There is nothing wrong with that post at all. I really hope they fix how they rotate players. This is from Deontay. Look, I don't know how it's going to go this year at the running back position. They got a lot of talent. But it can't be worse than the rotation they did last year. A guy would get a lather up, play good, and they take him out. I'll never understand the 2025 running back rotation for the Florida State Seminoles. Not a chance. Showerhead 9608. The team will not perform well. The losses will far outnumber the wins. Okay, that guy is not playing around. He does not like the opportunities here. Till Dog 12. If we're going to compete nationally in NIL, we first have to compete in conference. That's fair. Raise the money. If Miami is spending $5 million for quarterback, we need to spend $6 million. Who's going to be that person that's going to donate like that, my man? That's the question. But I get what he's saying, though. Eric, I have to believe Miami, Bama, and Oregon had more money and a more expensive roster than Signetti and beat them. Beat the brakes off both Bama and Oregon. Probably right. Here's one thing about Signetti. Now, he picked a really good quarterback. I saw Fernando Mendoza play live the Cal at Auburn game the year before, and Cal's offensive line was horrific. Remember, Florida State beat Cal in Mendoza. He was really accurate, but he had to run for his life. The running game stunk. It's amazing if you give somebody an offensive line how it can change their future. And he was always accurate. At one point in that game for Cal, even though they had no line, he was like really accurate and doing well with short passes. They were like 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 on third down. It was insane. Quarterback makes up for a lot of ills, brother. A whole lot of ills. Thank you to everybody that showed up. I kind of broke it down. I think that the Florida State football program has improved. I liked Bianchi's article talking about some of the numbers. I thought he did a really good job. Go check it out. The one thing I would have added, no doubt about it, is how much money did they spend on NIL? And a lot of you in the chat brought that up. It's a problem. There's no way around it. Either you're in that elite tier or you're probably not going to win big. And by the way, I'm an Indiana grad. I know that they have a ton of money at Indiana. They got some really big boosters. Their facilities are dope. It's not hard to recruit there. It's a great spot in Bloomington. They're going to start recruiting better too. Winning helps, but they've got the cash. If Florida State wants to take that next step and get back to being elite, at some point, they got to have some boosters that are specifically donating to players. NIL, just 100% football player NIL. I don't know exactly what else they need to pay for. That's not my job, but that's how you win games. Stadium can look nice, but you need the players. As Bobby Bowden used to talk about all the time, I always thought that if I had better players than you, I was probably going to win. And he's right. The X's and O's statement that he used to make, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes. That's another Bowden comment that he made over and over again. And he's right. So there's a lot of things to kind of look at there, and keep in mind that anything can happen. Florida State, if they win that SMU game, maybe they build some momentum. And Norvell's teams usually start out pretty well. Even when they lost to Notre Dame, what was it, 21? They played pretty well. Obviously, they beat Bama. They beat the brakes off of them last year. They're going to play well against SMU, but do they win if it's a close game? And if they don't win that game, do they fold? Remember, the last few years, anytime they lost one, they always lost the next one. They can never stop the bleeding. It's a weird factor with his teams. So we'll see. But thank you very much for checking out Locked On Seminoles on a Sunday night. I appreciate it. We'll be back all this week. I'm going to dive into SMU. No offense to New Mexico State. I'll touch on them a little bit, what I want to see, and I'll make a prediction on Friday or whatever. But I want to really dive into SMU. Just bits and pieces. Kevin Jennings, etc. Because I know people are more interested in that, honestly. I know I am. Than New Mexico. So that's something I'll talk about this week extensively, a little bit around college football, some of the week 0 games and other things like that. But if you have not already, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with somebody else. This has been Locked On Seminoles.